Hello there and welcome back to my channel, and as you can see from the title, today I'm going to be talking about how I organise myself for my writing. I got a really nice message the other day on Messenger. I won't say who it's from in case she wants to be kept anonymous, but she said, "Hi Rose, I'm really interested in how you plan out your novels with those fabulous folders. I'm terrible at planning, so I was hoping to find some inspiration." So quite often I would post photos on Facebook about how my editing is going. So on the photos I had taken a photograph of this folder, and as you can see there's loads of file dividers inside it, loads of file dividers that side, and so this person is interested as to see how I go about organising my novel. So I'm going to attempt to explain that in this video. I did touch upon this in a previous video and I will put a link to that video below, but that video was a lot longer and it was about other things, so I thought I would just do one specifically today to do with organising my novel. And what I will say is that obviously this is just a way that suits me. Other writers will write completely differently, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong way. It's just I find that this is the way that I like to work. Will also say that my background, really my working work, is in PA and secretarial work, so I'm kind of used to being very organised, you know, for my job, and so that's just the way I am. But you know, there's other people that would just write by the seat of their pants, and that's fine too. But anyway, so I will explain how I go about it. So this is my fourth book and I am pretty much finished. I have done 3 rounds of edits on it. I do have a couple more scenes to add, but then after that I'm going to submit it. So yeah, this is my 4th book, and I did write it slightly differently, I suppose, to the other 3. So I'll explain how I went about it. So basically all it says is there's just a little thing on the side saying current novel. I keep this in I have like a walk-in wardrobe, and I keep it up on the shelf with other files for things. And what I did was, as you can see now, it's very full now because I've written it, but at the start, when I first opened this file, I started here with just 5 file dividers, and these file dividers said, one said hook, so I wanted to write what the main hook of the story was, or what the main conflict was at the start of the novel, and then I wanted to write what the twist would be, and then I wanted to make a few notes on what the second twist would be, and then I wanted to put what the conclusion would be. So kind of like beginning, middle and end, but the middle was a couple of twists, a couple of major twists, and then I had another file divider, and that was on characters. Oh, and then there's another file divider actually, and it is on timeline. So basically when I'm starting a novel, and I started this back in October and we're now in March, so it's taken me about it's taken about 6 months all in, 5-6 months. And so when I was looking at the hook, that's basically when I was sitting down at the start to think about what were the main themes that I wanted to write about, and what issues that I wanted to have in the book. For example, you know, domestic violence, feminist issues, the Me Too movement, things like that. And also then I wanted to look at the mystery or the conflict, you know, the main sort of thing, the hook of what the story fell upon. So when you open it up, there's a situation, there's a mystery, the reader, you know, doesn't know how this has happened, what's going on, but hopefully wants to find out. And so we're following that story and trying to figure out what happened. And so that's the hook at the start, or the conflict, or the beginning. And then I planned roughly, you know, what the ending would be, how this was going to be resolved or not resolved, or, you know, how it was going to end. So you got the beginning, you got the end, and then the middle bit is the harder bit. And in the middle bit, you know, you're wanting a few twists and turns along the way. So started with the beginning, made a note of the end, although that could change as you write the novel. And I made a note of a couple of big twists that could happen, and then, you know, you start the journey of writing the book. And of course you go into it and you've no real idea of what's going to happen. And there's a brilliant analogy about writing, actually, which is like, it's kind of like you're in a car on a dark night and you've got the headlights in front of you and you can only see that little bit, and you just keep on seeing the little bit, and then you see a little bit more, and then you see a little bit more, and it kind of unravels for you. So when you start off writing a novel, you're not really quite sure how it's going to turn out. But I suppose the reason why I like to organise myself so much is because there's a lot going on in my head, and so if I can get it out and onto paper and kind of organised in some way, it gives me a bit of breathing space, and it then allows me to be a bit more creative and a bit more flexible, because I know what the boundaries are of it. So then I had the file divider on characters, and I spent quite a lot of time getting to know my characters. And what you want to do is you get a theme, and then you want to use characters that are going to really show that theme. So, you know, for example, if you're showing a theme on domestic violence, obviously you're going to want to show a man who is, or a woman who is being violent, and then you're wanting to show the person on the other side of it, the victim. And so I started to get to know those characters. I would sometimes go through magazines and look for images of the characters to get to know them. And then I would start to look more at the side characters, like for example, the policeman, the friend of the victim, etc., etc. So I spent quite a bit of time on that. And then with the timeline, I'll just flash this quickly. It's kind of like a spreadsheet. So, and obviously I've got this on my computer, and I ended up using this a lot. So what I did was I divided the book into 5 parts. So part 1 was the hook and the conflict and the mystery and figuring out what happened. And part 5 was the climax, the ending, the open ending, or the happy ending, or the epilogue, or, you know, whatever way you're going to wrap it up. And then parts 2, 3 and 4 were the middle sections. So part 2, we've got a twist, and so we're going on a slightly different journey. Part 3, we're getting another twist and we're going on another journey. And part 4, we're getting another twist. And so that's to try and keep the reader on his toes and make sure that the book is always moving. And by the way, I must add at this point too, you know, I'm talking very confidently about this book as though, you know, as though it's going to be published and everything's going to be hunky-dory. I don't know. I have yet to submit it. I have my fingers crossed. I'm hoping that it will be okay. The proof will be in the pudding, and I'm sure if you follow me on Facebook, you'll be hearing news of how the submission went. But I can only talk from my experience, and also what I do is I do read a lot. Well, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and what I do is, especially if I particularly love a book, if I really love a book, I'll listen to it once just to enjoy it, and then I will go back and I'll listen to it again, and I'll make notes, and I will examine, the structure, how it's structured, what way the writer's done it, because you can learn so much, obviously, from doing that. So anyway, then these are the next section of Waldwriters, and these were all to do with the characters. So there's a kind of a main storyline between Hannah and Kyle, then there's a storyline between Julia and Kyle, then Kate and Guy, and Simon and Kerry, and that all sounds very confusing, but although there's a lot of characters, they're all unified in the same object, so the same storylines pulling them all together, so hopefully you have a sense of what was going on with each one of them. But the reason why I separated that into the sections was so then I could get the section with Hannah and Kyle, and within this little thing then I can make notes of them, of the beginning of their story, how they start off, what their conflict is, and how it ends, and their middle. So I can break the novel down into those 4 storylines and put their beginning, middle and end, so that at each stage of the novel I've kind of got pointers of who's doing what and where. So then the next set of file dividers, which is a massive big chunk here, this is this big chunk. These are just basically parts 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 that I was talking about earlier. So part 1 is the beginning of the novel, part 5 is the ending of the novel, and parts 2, 3 and 4 are the twists. And so whilst I was writing the novel, I would have put in part 1, okay, here's my notes here of what should be happening in this section, and this is what should be happening with these characters. And so I would kind of make notes, and then when I did sit down to do a writing session, it wasn't so scary because the notes were there, so I had stuff to work on. And then when a chapter was written, I printed out the chapter and I just discarded the notes because, they were done with. So now what's left, instead of notes on the thing now, it's just the chapters. The chapters are in there, and those wee file dividers are just the chapter numbers. So there's 33 chapters in the book. And also what I do is I've got this Excel spreadsheet that I was talking about. I'll try to show you. I don't know if it's going to be awkward to try and show you this actually. And I'll just explain it. So there's a spreadsheet, and on it there's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and then part 1 it'll be chapter 1, and then I make a note of how many words are in the chapter, whether it's in the past or the present, and a brief description of the title, just so I know what that chapter's about. And then in another tab in the spreadsheet I will put chapter 1, and when I went through the edits the second time, I was looking for things like, say if I had mentioned Julia was straightening her long dark hair, well, I would make a note of that. The policeman went up to the red door, number 19, and so I would make a note of that. And so for each chapter I would make a note of where anything was said about a character that denoted descriptions of their appearance or their house or their maiden name or their age or something where if I wasn't careful I might have ended up duplicating that information or contradicting myself somewhere. So for each chapter I made those notes, and then what I did was I would have had like a section on Hannah, and I would have put anything I had found out about Hannah, I would put it under her name and just make sure that I had kept it consistent. And quite often I didn't. Like Hannah started off as being 32 years old, and then miraculously by the end of the novel she was 31. There's a couple of other things as well, I can't remember now. There was two sort of minor characters that were very similar in appearance. There was two reactions to things that were exactly the same, like two characters had a reaction to something that was exactly the same, you know, and I had to change that. So yeah, things like that. And you know, I'll finish on this, like it all sounds so confusing and so overwhelming and as if there's so much to it, but really there isn't. Really there isn't, because when you, I mean, I am very kind to myself whenever I'm writing. I break it down into very small sections. So for example, I will say to myself, okay, on Saturday I'm going to do some writing, and I'm going to sit down from, you know, 11 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock, and I'm going to really focus, and then I'm going to, you know, take a break. And so because I tell myself that, because I do things in short spurts and then take a break, I kind of break it down into small manageable sections. Because if I had sat down to write this novel, you know, 5 or 6 months ago and thought to myself how much work there would be involved, I probably wouldn't have done it. I probably wouldn't have done it. But when you break it down into small manageable segments, then, you know, it's not as scary. And it's back to that analogy again of the car with the headlights and just doing a little bit and doing a little bit and trying to enjoy it, you know. And sometimes you're writing stuff and you're writing away, and then something will come up and you'll think, well, where did that come from? And obviously it came from your subconscious. And I think that's why I like to be so organised, because it then gives me the ability to just relax and know, okay, I've got these notes to fall back on, so it's not so scary when I hit a blank page. So anyway, I think that's quite enough waffling from me. If you liked the video, please hit like and please subscribe, and if you have anything else that you'd like me to discuss, please let me know. And thank you so much for watching. Over and out.